Oh, hi, hey, welcome back to another Kimera video. Today we are going back to basics and we will talk about dilution, and I will show you on the palette what I mean by the different level of dilutions. So we'll start right away, give a like to the video, will help with the algorithm, and let's go! I'm using Kimera Kolors for doing this video at the beginning. It's valid for every other color. I put two paddles of an indigo and a white. Indigo and white, as you can see. And the colors are completely undiluted. And I am picking them up and drying them on this base marine. And I will show you things with glazes, layers, base coating, this type of stuff in this video. And I will put everything on the palette, like the water right now, so that you can see what I'm doing all the time. So I'm not using the brush and going on the palette, on the glass, but I'm going on the palette so you can know what's going on. The brush is completely dry, so you can understand what's going on. Because sometimes we have a little bit of moisture in the brush that alters the results, and I'm usually using that moisture when I paint because I understand what's going on. But in this case I dried it very well so that you can see what is going on for the video purpose. So I am leaving the puddles of colors very alone and very clumped together so that they don't dry fast, and this is a thing that is very important to do. Also, another important thing that you should do is to not pre-dilute paints. You should put the puddle of paint there, leave it there, and pick it up only when needed. That is important. So I always set up the palette with the colors in sides of my palette and then pick whatever I need from there and leave them alone the more possible because so they don't dry. And also when I do the puddles of colors, they have a non-dilution. They are mixed like now with indigo and white. And I don't dilute them much, I only dilute on a side of the puddle and you will see it. So right now I'm creating a little bit of a lighter color because indigo is very dark, so that you can see it applied. And as you can see, the color is staying in the palette in a specific spot, it doesn't move before diluting it. And then I dilute a side, and as you can see, the color is starting to behave a little bit different, meaning that it moves better from the brush to the palette. And then I'll do little tests, as you can see, to see if the color discharges from the brush well enough. This is the reasoning behind diluting the colors in the first place. And I'm creating a layer. A layer is a diluted color that is flowing well from the brush, but is not yet a glaze. And we will see how it is a glaze. It will cover, but it's not too covering like a base coating, it's a little less. And you will need multiple layers to be able to cover a part well. Maybe a couple, 2 or 3. But yeah, the important part is that you will see that the color flows from the brush, covers decently well, and on the palette it stays firm. Because as you can see now, this is a glaze. When you create a dilution for a glaze, the paint on the palette moves. If you check the palette, you see that it shrinks on the palette. It doesn't stay in the spot. And this is how you can understand that this is a glaze color. And in fact, it doesn't cover on the miniature. And it's perfectly normal, because you don't have enough pigment to work with at this point. Instead, the layer that I did before, as you can see, it covers. Now I'm creating a base coat that is basically undiluted color. And this is possible with Kimera Kolors because there is a lot of pigmentation. With other brands, the base coat would behave possibly like a layer. So you need to know this difference based on the product that you are using. And applying a base coat of undiluted color, it covers super fast and super well, especially because there is a bit of white mixed in, and the white acts as a covering color. And it's way faster to cover like this than with layers. So the difference is clear now. The base coat one is more uniform than the layer. The layer shows brush strokes, and those are made because the unevenness of the covering, so you need to do more than one pass, and presumably in different direction if you want to cover better. So I'm rediluting the paddle a little bit because of evaporation. This happens, it's normal. And then I'm redoing the layer to cover evenly everywhere. But in general, if you want to have a smoother base coating, it's better to have a thicker layer at the beginning than more of a base coat than a layer. It saves you time, and the brush stroking of the base coat is better. For sure, don't go into glazing when you start applying color on your miniature, because it will not yield good result. Glazing is used for other purposes, like blending layers, for example. And as you can see, I dilute for a layer consistency to go over the first part, only on a side of the paddle. By doing this, you preserve the color, and you can choose what consistency you want of a mix you made. So do it only on a side. Don't mix all the water in all the paddle. And also in the other side, the glaze part is only on one side, as you can see, and not in every part of the paddle. So I don't do a paddle of color that is glaze and another one that is base coat. And you can understand when you pick up the color from your palette if you are at the right consistency based on how it flows from the brush, on how it behaves on the palette. So you can check. After a while it becomes super comfortable and natural, this movement. So don't worry. At the beginning you might need to check this behavior a little bit, but after a while you will be okay. So I put in the palette a new color, this one. That is an AK pastel green color, just to show some differences to you. This color is a bit more transparent than Kimera. This is why it also blends easier, and also because it's a little bit glossy. The consistency of this color straight out of the bottle, the behavior when you touch it, is like a layer consistency of a Kimera color. It means that it's more diluted. Also, as you can see on the miniature, the color doesn't cover as a thick base coat like I did with Kimera. And now I'm trying to do even a lighter layer, almost a glaze. And as you can see in the palette, the color moves after you mix it. And I am glazing it over to make it more covering and more smooth, with less brush strokes around, to see the behavior. And the behavior is a bit different than the rest. So you need to understand what colors you are using and how they behave mostly. So that one straight out of the bottle is very different than a mixed color straight out of the bottle of a Kimera. So what you need to do is check the behavior on the palette and on the brush. If it flows fast from the brush, then it is more of a layer. If not, it's something different. And picking up the thick Kimera and putting some of these, the result that you get is basically like an indigo plus white directly. It's very similar at that point. So I'm doing this mix that is lighter than the others to do an extra layer on top of what I already painted. This is a layer consistency, as you can see from the palette, and I'm painting on top of the previous color. You don't need now as thick of a color as a base coat, because you already have the covering, so you can write it a little less covering on top to create your gradient. And the behavior right now is basically the same as a layer done by Kimera. So the thing here is just to know how much to dilute stuff, not to the level of a glaze if you do a layer, but to the level of a glaze. And as you can see, it shrinks on the palette, so this is a glaze, to smooth out borders of your spot of color in the shoulder, for example. And it is exactly the same behavior as the other one, and different from a base coat. And you see it on the palette, this thing. Super important that you check it on the palette. And then you pick a little bit on your point, and then you do a smoothing out in the borders of the two different colors. And this will make the transition smoother. So right now I'm placing the color a little bit around. I'm doing it by stippling it. There are many techniques. I'm using this one. This video is not about learning the blending technique, it's more about the dilution levels. But still, you apply the glazes in the transition area if you want to make a smooth transition. Also, it's faster if you do a layer before and then you smooth out the transitions. Because if you build up just with glazing, it will take an amount of time that is unnatural, and I suggest you not do it. So this is a first approach. Then you smooth out the second transition with a darker color. The more you do these passages, the better the result, of course. So I'm picking up a dark tone, and I'm diluting it to a glaze consistency. And I'm picking it up only in the point, not making it go to the ferrule. You pick a little bit of amount and only on a side, as I showed you before, and then you go in the borders to smooth out the passage that you did before. You should also wait until everything is dry to do glazes. Do not glaze on top of a wet surface, it will not yield good results. So you have to wait. Anyway, this color by AK is basically a mix of indigo and white, maybe with a touch of green, but it's basically on that tone, so you can reach a very similar color by mixing those two. As you can see I'm doing there, they are very similar already. The amount of green is so low in the AK that the difference is barely noticeable. So now I'm doing a lighter one, and as you can see I had some water in the brush, so I created a glaze directly without picking up water because the brush was damp, and you see the crumpling of the color in the palette, so you know it was a glaze. It's pretty easy to spot at that point when you see this thing. And I'm creating a lighter one on the shoulder. Okay, at this point, after having done all these little jumps, I am blending with glazes, so you can see more on how it's done. And I am doing it on the edges. I am creating these glazes that are very transparent on the palette, as you can see, and they are shrinking after you put the water. And I'm doing it with a brush loaded not too much, really not too much, only on the tip, and moving the paint from outside to the inside. It's from the outside to the inside because I'm picking the highest color, the lightest color. So I'm going from a darker one towards the one that I am using that was already placed. And when you change spot, you change also the color of the glaze. So now I'm picking up a darker one and I'm pushing outward because this is the darkest one. So it's always a pushing towards the color that is the same as the one that you picked to do a proper glaze. If you remember, before I did a glaze using the Akappa, and now I'm doing it just with white and indigo from Kimera, and I obtained the same color. Properties are a little bit different because they have a different consistency. Now I am drying up the brush just to be sure and show you, picking up some paint and making it a glaze, you see, because of the behavior on the palette. So you have a glaze that is very similar to the other glaze that I did at the beginning. Drying well the brush, picking up only in the tip of the brush the color, and I'm doing it in the mid part, because this is where the previous color was placed. I want to say that this blending exercise is not going to be perfect because blending takes a lot of time, we don't have much. So it's just an explanation to show you the dilution method, but then the time that you need is more, of course. And also remember another thing, in camera paints look better than in hand, so it always requires more work. And the difference in what you can glaze, what color, for example, the glaze of this dark one will yield a different result than a lighter one, even if you apply it in different spots. So it's very important to know where to apply the glazes. And now I am creating a new thing here, making it very liquid. As you can see, this is more of a wash type. The color shrink a lot, you see, the more you dilute it, the more it shrinks on the palette. This is super diluted and it shrinks the most. The least diluted, the least it shrinks. So when you want to be sure that a color is super thin, you just need to check this property. And that type of color that I created before was more like a wash consistency than anything else. And if you let that color puddle on the miniature, it will create some frosting depending on how matte the color is. I wanted to show you the difference in covering. It's difficult to catch it on camera. Okay, now yes. You see the streaks there because of the level of coverage that I used in the example before. To obtain a uniform color, you cannot put colors that are too diluted first. You need to go in steps, and the jump cannot be too high. So when you do a glaze with a more transparent color, you have to do less jumps or more passages, as I am trying to show you right now. So every color have their own advantages. A more transparent color is easier to blend, but way more difficult to cover properly. So right now I'm doing some stippling to cover holes in the paint. You can do cross-hatching, going in different directions when you try to cover, so every flake of pigment get on the miniature in a different way, so you can cover better. So these paints behave differently. You just need to know how they behave to be able to fix stuff correctly. It's not that there is a paint that is better or worse. They have different properties that you need to handle, and you need to handle well. And then they can do stuff for you that is what you want exactly from that color. That is important. Now, I will go into wet blending and explain how it's done. You need to pick a color that is very undiluted and very dense, and you pick a lot of it. and you place it so that the color is not dry. And then you put another color on top, like the white that I did, so it mixes on the miniature itself. So no water dilution, a lot of color, and mix directly on the miniature. This is how you do wet blending, and how is the dilution for wet blending. So the purest the better. And then you mix there. You treat your miniature like a palette at that point. So you have a gradient. The gradient with a wet blending is not usually super perfect, but is good enough to work with. And then you go in the edges, you see, where the two colors touch, and you mix more, so it disappears more and more. You clean the brush, and then you go in, and you move the paint again, so that you achieve a better blend. It requires a little bit of courage to do so, but you can do it, I'm sure. So, and then you can fix it with glazes, as we shown before, if you like.
Kimera brushes. They are Kolinsky sable, super high quality, new shapes, especially made for painting miniatures. They are super good, try them, link in the description.
Okay, I'm now showing you the result. Of course it's not the best, but it's just to illustrate the point. You can refine it however you want. There are some little marks, but I repeat, don't worry, the more you glaze, the more it will become smooth. So it's just a matter of practice. Now I'll show you how it works a transparent color to change the tone of something that you already did. So you can even do it with non-transparent color, but the use of transparent colors is exactly to shift things that you did before, shifting you. So now I'll show you exactly this, and I will place it on top of the transitions, and you'll see a change in tone. Right now I'm just pushing a little bit of the wet part on the paint that was already there. And remember that a transparent color is a little bit more useful in the lights, not in the shadows. So I'm creating a new light there to make it a little bit lighter and a little bit more smooth, a little in the gradient, so that you can see better. I put in the palette a cobalt blue-green from Kimera. It is a transparent color. It has not a covering property at all like the indigo. This one, in fact, is written that is transparent on the bottle. This means that unless you add white with it, it will not cover at all. You need to add a little bit of white if you want a little coverage. Otherwise, it will only tint. And as you can see, it already behaves like a glaze, as you might notice. So of course it will not cover much. If you want a bit more covering, you add white in it and you create a new color. That is this light bluish color that is, of course, the vast majority is white. As you can see, also the color from AK, the vast majority was white. It's very similar in a way. So you might know already what's going on there. So if you pick it pure but very diluted, you treat it like a glaze, a transparent color like this. Do not use it to build up a gradient, but only to tint. And now you'll see that this shoulder part will become more greenish and a little bit more uniform actually while you do it. The change is subtle, so you will need to repeat it several times before you achieve a strong color shift. But this type of color are not made to do strong anything. It's a thing to make subtle changes to achieve what you want and be more precise in the hue. It's a is a technique for advanced painters, of course, this thing. But I wanted to show you how they are used. And then before applying it again, you need to wait a little. That is dry, otherwise you leave streaks. It needs to be very dry. And then you can apply it again. And you will see a more consistent change in the color at that point. In the video it's difficult to appreciate the change, but it's already a bit visible if you compare it with the sword. And then when you need a little bit more power, covering power with the white, you see the difference that is there. And that one was on a layer consistency, you noticed from the palette. Very different behavior on the palette. I repeated this a lot, but this is how you check it. Even when you see video from other painters and the colors that they use, for example the AK, how it behaves, or Vallejo colors, you know, the palette will tell you the story behind the color itself. Okay, I want to do a summary of what I did and what you need to know. It is very important that you know the difference between a layer, a glaze and a base coat, and this is based on how the color behaves when you move it with your brush on the palette. The more it stays together, the color, and it doesn't move much after you move it with your brush, the more it is of a thick consistency. The more instead, when you dilute it, it expands and then it retracts and changes behavior in the palette, it means that it's very thin. This is super useful also when you watch video of other people. So you know what they are doing exactly, how much dilution they have, even if they don't tell you. So every color is a little bit different and they behave a little bit differently, so you need to know, but you can check these also on top of the miniature. If you want to make disappear the brush marks on a miniature, glazing is your friend, so you know what to do with the glazing and you know how much dilution it is. To start build up color, you need instead a much more thick approach, and you need to leave the colors alone in the puddle. Do not pre-dilute it, and when you want to dilute it, you either create a new little puddle somewhere else, picking up the color, or you do it on a little spot. And do not overload your brush with water when you try to dilute it. So you do like this, and you put a little bit of color of water in a corner, so you can pick it and it's always the same and the color doesn't go dry. Remember to not overload the brush, because the brush can hold a lot of moisture and make your puddle of colors behave differently. So do not mix everything, just do it in sides and be controlled. The palette control is what will make you a good painter. This is the best and most important part. Color on the miniature is a result in the end of this process. Not more than that. Okay, that's all for today. If you have any question, put it down in the comment, because I know I stayed in the surface of this topic. So if you want to go more into the specifics, tell me and I will prepare a second part of the video. For example, I didn't talk about dilution of inks. That could be interesting. So yeah, it could be that, or dilution of metallics. Another interesting topic. So let me know what you are interested in and I'll make another one. For now, thank you and see you the next time. Bye!